Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambeau channel. Let me give you a good reason why you need XRP, why the world needs XRP. I'll tell you right here at the outset of the video, there's never going to be deep enough liquidity for every trading pair on the planet that could possibly exist. I mean, plus, not even every asset that ever exists or ends up getting tokenized will be on every single exchange. And then there are something like, I don't know, several hundred cryptocurrency exchanges in existence. And then if you talk about tokenizing stocks ultimately one day and then having crypto and tokenized stocks on the same platform at some point in the future, perhaps, well, there are 60 major exchanges for that throughout the entire world. And everything's getting tokenized. You talk about NFTs. You're never going to have deep enough liquidity on every single asset on every single exchange, crypto or otherwise, the world over. You're never going to have that. There's not enough demand for every single one of these things. There won't be a trading pair for every single possible match. You know, just like you can use, it's easy. So the United States dollar, obviously global reserve, you can use that, certainly where I live, to buy pretty much any cryptocurrency in existence. But then it gets a little bit more iffy if you're talking about a different currency. Like, what if I did want to use an exotic currency, what would be considered an exotic currency in my country, on an American exchange to do that? Well, I actually can't. So there's trading pairs right there that don't exist. And so what do you do in a world where you're never going to have every single trading pair that could exist actually exist because there's not enough demand for it, but maybe for some people there will be? Well, you need to be able to bridge these assets and convert from one fiat currency to another, and that's specifically what Ripple's doing in positioning XRP as a bridge currency. So I wanted to share with you some thoughts from David Schwartz, who of course is Ripple CTO and co-creator of the XRP ledger. There was this clip, and I transcribed this thing, and it was from a few years back. And so this is a topic that I've talked about in terms of like why it makes sense to have XRP as a bridge currency rather than just using stable coins. And this is one more piece of the puzzle to help people understand, which is why, like, it's not easy to understand why it makes sense to have XRP. You can't just have like a 5-minute conversation and then fully get it and not have questions. It takes, in my estimation, for most people, like months of diligent research, frankly, at least, to really have a decent handle on all of the aspects and all the things that need to be considered and start to get it to the point where you've had enough repetition where it starts to feel like fluent in your brain when you're thinking through it. It usually takes at least that much to even start to get anywhere even close to that. And this is one of those ideas, which is why I wanted to highlight this. It's a piece of the puzzle. It helps to paint the picture of why having an asset like XRP, which doesn't have counterparty risk, is important. And the fact that it doesn't have counterparty risk plays into where it could possibly be listed. Since there's no counterparty risk, unless there's some sort of BS regulatory concern like we have with the SEC right now, although I think that'll get worked out. Outside of stuff like that, it should be able to be listed pretty much anywhere. And given that it's been around for the longest time, if the asset class keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, can you imagine the amount of liquidity that could mean for XRP and then the additional utility that it would have as a result if more people are buying and selling it? Well, sky's the limit in those regards. So anyway, here's what David Schwartz had to say. He was being interviewed, and the host said the following. And shout out and credit to @RizXRP, who shared this on Twitter just several days or so ago. And so the host to David Schwartz said the following: "There are a bunch of different cryptocurrencies out there. Bitcoin is kind of decentralized. You don't want a centralized bank involved. ETH allows you to program decentralized applications. Make the case for XRP. What is its benefit and purpose?" Very good question. Make the case, like sell me on XRP. Well, he had a pretty damn good answer. So check this out. Here's what David Schwartz had to say. Well, I would say there's kind of two aspects to that. The first is, what is Ripple doing with XRP? And the second is, what is everybody else in the world doing with XRP? From Ripple's point of view, XRP has the properties to be an intermediary and settlement asset because it's fast and it's cheap to move. What I mean by a settlement asset, when you pointed out that 50-pound, pulled out the 50-pound note. Let's pause a note. He's talking about something from earlier in the interview. And so he says, when you pulled out that 50-pound note and you pointed out you can't move the 50-pound note to Mars in 50 milliseconds, XRP, you can move around the world in just a couple of seconds. It's much faster than Bitcoin and Ethereum. So one example of a use case is Qualix. They're doing remittances right now between the United States and Mexico. So I'll pause and note, as I cited, so this is from a few years back before on-demand liquidity corridors were shut down to any endpoint touch in the United States, although again, I firmly believe that's coming back. But Qualix was an on-demand liquidity partner, so in that US-Mexico corridor. And then David Schwartz says, so rather than having to move that money the conventional way, which takes several days and is very expensive, they just buy XRP at the moment they need it, and a few seconds later, they sell it for Mexican pesos. So what you have is you have a remittance pipeline that sources liquidity on demand, and you're not exposed to the volatility of cryptocurrencies because XRP is so fast, you hold it for just a minute or two, that's less volatile than the peso over 2 or 3 days. And it's 40 to 60% cheaper. So we're pursuing those kinds of intermediary uses. And so let me pause right here. And this is where it gets into the idea, what he's about to cite next. This is what I was saying at the opening of the video here. You're not going to have a pair for everything that is tokenized or possibly could be tokenized. You're not going to have a pair for any. Let me say it like this. On any given platform, on any cryptocurrency exchange, let's just talk about cryptocurrency exchanges, for example. You're not going to list every single asset in existence. And even if you did list every single asset in existence, you're not going to have a trading pair for every way that you can mix and match all of those. Because there wouldn't be sufficient demand for that. It's not going to happen, right? And so here is what David Schwartz said, and he was articulating that idea by stating the following. And again, this is key to understanding. It's one of the key things to understand as to why XRP is so useful as an intermediary asset. And so here's the rest of the quote from David Schwartz. If we're going to have hundreds of thousands of assets, we can't have millions of asset pairs with deep liquidity. You can't take any one of those hundreds of thousands of assets and just have lots of liquidity to every single one of those hundreds of thousands of assets. There's just too many of them. So our strategy to position XRP as the intermediary asset, the liquidity source. And so that's the quote. So when we're talking about liquidity exists because people are buying and selling from each other. If there's a bunch of people buying and selling, there's a lot of liquidity. But if you're talking about just a handful of people needing, less popular conversions from one cryptocurrency to another, you don't need certain pairs. And here's a perfect example of that. There's this headline, and I covered this when it popped up in the news. This is from August 2nd this year, from You Today. XRP pair to be delisted by Bitstamp Exchange. And the pair in question here was XRP/PAX. So it's XRP, PAX. Now, PAX, I wasn't familiar with them, but it doesn't really matter. It's a stable coin. It's a United States dollar stable coin called the Paxos Standard, and I don't pretend to know anything about it, but it's very small. Just to give you an idea here, global trading volume for Pax dollar, according to CoinMarketCap, is less than $3.5 million. 3.5 million globally. That's what CoinMarketCap reports. Now compare XRP, 24-hour trading volume, according to CoinMarketCap, $828 million. So 828 million versus less than 3.5 million. So I'm not thinking that there's a problem with demand for XRP, but for that particular trading pair, maybe PAX is still being traded on their exchange, but the XRP PAX trading pair, if there's not sufficient demand, well, there you go. And so this is part of the concept of what was being pointed out there. And so you're not going to have every asset listed on every exchange, so you have a problem right there. But even if you magically could, you're not going to have sufficient demand for every blend of every way that you could possibly convert from one to another. And so in theory, a solution would be every human on the planet only uses one exchange. So we get rid of the roughly 400 cryptocurrency exchanges, and we get rid of pretty much all the 60 stock exchanges, and then put every single asset in one, make every human on the planet use it. Yeah, is that going to work? All the governments on the world are going to be cool with that? No, that's not how this works. And then, we'll just, in fact, you can fix it further by just forcing everyone to use, either the United States dollar or a particular cryptocurrency for money the world over. See, it's childish ideas. That's not how this is ever going to shake out. It's not what's going to happen. People are going to want to use different cryptocurrencies for different reasons and different forms of money for different reasons. Geographic differences, all sorts of things. There's counterparty risk. There's all sorts of dynamics here. And since it's never going to be a one-size-fits-all world, that's why you're always going to need to convert from one fiat currency to another, or from one tokenized asset to another, right? And if you're talking about utilizing a central bank digital currency or a stable coin, well, you're never going to get everybody on board with that because there's counterparty risk that not everyone is going to be willing to take on. You know, I'm just saying, pick an exotic currency, and you tell me why I would want to use that in the United States. Well, there are also parts of the world that aren't even going to want to use the United States dollar, even though it's the global reserve, so it's the quote unquote most popular fiat currency out there. You could say, okay, fine, but you're not going to get everyone. It's not a one size fits all world. And XRP is the only cryptocurrency on the entire planet that's being positioned for this particular use case. So that's what I'm saying. So that's one piece of the puzzle, and I could flesh this out even further. But you see how if you're going to sufficiently like share ideas, even one idea, to really properly go through it, it can take a long time. And I hope that was a good start if you haven't thought through it like this before. But I could definitely go on. But that's why it's best to kind of break this up into little chunks, I think, because otherwise it's too much at once. But these are the types of things that I was so curious about when I jumped into crypto towards the end of 2017. And I didn't really have like a great source to find everything all in one spot. I mean, you're never necessarily going to find that. But it's hard to know, like, okay, but who's saying things that actually make sense that I can trust? It's hard to find, but I will say that it's easier to find stuff now than it was in 2017, but still, to get a handle on all of the aspects and to consider, does XRP actually make sense for various use cases, including as an intermediary asset? It's if you're new to crypto, it's hard to figure this stuff out. And so I think it's worth talking about this stuff from time to time. And I've never fleshed out this idea quite like this before, so I thought I'd just take a minute. And I hope I did a reasonable job kind of breaking that down. If I didn't, because it makes sense in my brain, if I didn't, please let me know. And if you have any questions, if I can clarify anything further, I'd like to. But it's an important consideration. But I'll go ahead and wrap up here and hopefully get some feedback from you guys. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.